Annexation Special Meeting and Work Session, Tuesday, February 27, 2007. We'll start the meeting by entertaining a motion for the appointment of a clerk. Cindy Crimmins could not be with us this evening, and we need to have a clerk, and I believe we do have a volunteer on the board.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'd like to nominate Tracy for our clerk this evening.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion is approved. Thanks, Tracy, for agreeing to be the clerk this evening. Next, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item is approval of the agenda. Any comments regarding the agenda?
Mr. President, I would like to eliminate item 11B, convene special annual meeting for acquisition of district office space.
Okay, we have a recommendation that we eliminate 11B. Any other modifications, additions to the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the revised agenda, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, motion is approved. The next item is I'll entertain a motion for us to suspend the Roberts Rules of Order so that we can have an open and somewhat freewheeling discussion for our work session, where we're going to talk about the annexation petition, the Hoffman Architects proposal, and a few other items. So I'll entertain a motion for suspension of the rules.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. We'll then move into the work session segment of the meeting. Item 4, the City of Hudson Annexation Petition Update. Tim, can you lead us on that?
Sure. Last Thursday, the City Plan Commission met and approved the district's request for annexation of the new elementary school site parcel. The next step in the process is that the recommendation will go to the City Council. The Finance Committee will consider impact fees, and we should have a draft agreement of the annexation agreement sometime about the first week or two in March, and then at that point each party will review it, and then it will go back to the City Council hopefully around the second meeting in March of a City Council meeting for approval.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Tim?
Quick question, was that was the Planning Commission?
That's right.
Unanimous decision?
Yes.
Unanimous recommendation?
Unanimous recommendation.
Okay. We look forward to ongoing progress associated with the annexation petition and additional reports from Tim. Next item, Hoffman Architects Concept Design Progress Report. Dick, do you want to lead us?
I can. Based on successful passing of the referendum, we did, as the board knows, engage Hoffman Architects out of Appleton, Wisconsin. Fair to say that they've been very, very busy. The school district has been busy with the committee that is working with Hoffman. We're right on schedule where we need to be. And so this evening, based on several meetings that we've had with Hoffman, we're in a position to come back tonight and have Hoffman begin to put some ideas and concepts in front of the board and give input, comment back to them, because things are beginning to fall in place. and so far doing an excellent job, and very, very pleased. So I think with that, what I'd like to do, if I could just have the three of you stand up real quickly, I'll introduce by name, and then Tom, maybe you can kind of give some of the specifics on background, et cetera. But Tom Cox is a principal at Hoffman, and fair to say principal in charge of the project, Tom? Okay. And then next to Tom is Catherine Cruikshank, architect, also part of the Hoffman team. And then Mark Bolke, landscape architect, site planner for the Hoffman team. And then there's one other gentleman that would be lead architect rather than principal architect, a gentleman by the name of Jody Andrews that is not here tonight. So it's a four-person team that the committee, and the committee basically is myself and Mary, Tim Erickson, Pat Hodges, current principal at Willow River that will become the new principal up at the new elementary, and then Jim Staskell, head of our buildings and grounds department for the school district. And we last week went over to the Appleton area and visited a couple of schools that Hoffman has designed, and then this week the committee is going to be going to some Twin Cities locations, also looking at schools just to gain ideas and see what other newer schools are doing as far as layout, site design, etc. So with that, Tom, I would turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. As Dick mentioned, Jody is not here tonight with us. I think we all drew straws, and Jody's in Hawaii right now, so somehow he must have won something. I'm not sure, but it's too bad the rest of us didn't win something there. You might want to end up turning your chairs around, and Mark, I might ask you to go to the projector and kind of flip through the slides. As Dick mentioned, we've been spending a lot of time with the committee doing a lot of things, spending time doing programming interviews with staff and administration, trying to understand all the various spaces in the building. We have been spending a lot of time, Mark in particular, working through all the city issues regarding annexation. We've been spending a lot of time sort of understanding this building more as a concept and an idea rather than as a piece of architecture right now. And what we want to bring to you tonight are some of those ideas as they begin to form into architecture. We're not quite there yet, and that's okay. This is kind of a progress update to kind of give you, the board, a sense of where we're going and a sense of the direction of where we're going. So at the end of this, what we'd like to do is be able to get any comments, any thoughts that you might have to help us with some of the direction. And certainly anything that you can't think of tonight, funnel to Mary, and she'll make sure, or funnel to Dick, and he'll make sure that we get those ideas. We just gave this presentation prior to coming into this meeting to another group of people, sort of getting some ideas. It lasted about an hour. We're going to shorten that. We're going to try to do this in about a half hour. So I'm going to really play timekeeper. If I get going too fast, I'm going to tell myself to be quiet. And if my other two colleagues start stretching out a little bit too long, I'm going to tell them it's time to move on. So if I do that, that's where we're going. So quickly move ahead. Mark, why don't you... I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. We went through a lot of the ideas, some of the background of educational facility planning for us that forms some of these ideas. Next slide. This one I want to spend just a second on. As we design buildings, and particularly elementary school buildings, we truly understand and believe that the physical experience shapes subconscious perception in a building. So ideas of views, daylighting, indoor air quality, acoustics, color, aesthetics, temperature, humidity, and of course technology are all issues that are influencing how we design buildings today. Whatever school we design, and particularly for this school, we want to make sure that the building itself addresses some key ideas. You know, that the building itself contributes to better student performance. For example, acoustic ideas and noise control, lighting, daylighting, all of those factors have an influence on testing scores and performance. Increased daily attendance, increased teacher satisfaction and retention, reduced operating cost, reduced liability exposure, a positive influence on the environment, the ability to use this building as a teaching tool, and the ability to set a positive example for your community are all things that we know we can affect through design, through the design of this building. Just a couple of quick ideas of the building as a teaching tool. On your left-hand side is a floor plan of an elementary school we did in Amro, Wisconsin, where we used color theory as wayfinding and also being able to teach elementary kids about color theory. And you can see in the photograph in the middle how that translated into reality using the primary colors and what that means as you associate different colors with one another, and how that is translated then up into the building, into the classroom spaces as you follow up the floor plan. You can see a red area, a blue area, a yellow area. So color theory becomes both a wayfinding device and a teaching mechanism that the building itself is using. The drawing, the little simple drawing to the right, is an elementary school we did in Marshfield where we embedded a compass at the outside of the building, at the entranceway. That sort of dark triangle pointing north in the compass is actually that tall column that you see in the building entrance. And the light area that you see at the base of that column is actually a scale, where mom and dad can bring their kids up to school every year, stand in front of that scale, take a photograph, and kind of have that as a keepsake. So interacting with the building, again, as a piece of architecture, is something that we want to be able to, find those ideas that are going to be right for this school and be part of this school design. And then finally, in this part, Schools of the Future, the big idea here is speed of change is a defining characteristic. We know that how education is delivered is going to change. We know technology is going to change. We know maybe classroom arrangements are going to change. How can this building be designed to adapt to that sort of changing environment is going to be critical. Next. Then just a real quick notion on where we're at in the process. We've done the information gathering. We've developed that site program and that space program, which is basically saying how many classrooms are we going to have, how many square feet are going to be in each classroom. We've got that to the point where we're able to begin to have a notion and a sense of size of this building. We're going to show you some site layout concepts tonight. We're always obviously working with the project budget and making sure we're in lockstep with our design with the project budget. And then following on that, schematic design, design development, construction documents are all of those sort of formal pieces of the process that says, okay, we're going to turn these ideas into a real building, and really they speak mostly to the level of detail. Project bidding follows construction documents. That's when we go out and get the prices from the contractors. Project construction happens. Then there's a period of occupancy where there's kind of a transition where you take occupancy of the building, but maybe we're still finishing some things up. We're going through the training process on the building. School starts. Everybody celebrates. But for us, one of the most important pieces of the process is this ongoing verification, design intent, and building performance. We're going to be around for a long time, and we're going to measure the energy performance of this building as it marches out the first year, the second year, the third year. And we're going to watch this building and hopefully be able to help you when we're seeing things that by monitoring the energy use of this building, be able to come back and say, wait a minute, something in this mechanical system might not be operating as appropriately as it should. We're going to come back in and say, we need to take another look at this to help you really drive the performance of this building. The only way you can do that, both with design intent and performance, is to follow it after this building is complete. I'm going to have Mark kind of quickly go through a few concepts that we're starting to look at on the site.
Thank you. Okay. I'll just kind of take you through the steps that we've been going through as far as getting to, as the site design is evolving here. The first step is to create a site analysis for the project, and this is just a simple drawing that identifies what's existing on site right now. There's some low areas, high areas on the site. On the left-hand or west side of the site, you notice there's the existing YMCA driveway. There's the green represents the existing woods and the old railroad right-of-way there. And on the left-hand side is County Trunk F. On the north, the angled road is Cooley Trail on this drawing, north being up. And what this does is gives us a good idea of what's existing on site and how that's going to influence the design, the site design as well as the building design. As we look at one-story solutions, two-story solutions, where the building should be located, where the entries to the site are, where the orientation of fields, play areas, building on site. The next step that we took is we started looking at on the site. You have the site is about 39 acres, and you have a nice size site, which is excellent. You have opportunity here to orient the building properly, create good circulation on site, create safe circulation on site. So there's a lot of opportunity here. And we started looking at the main features of the site and how the building, where we could possibly place a building on the site. In this case, because of the size of the site and the way things lay out, we looked at 3 opportunities there's an A, B, and C called building zones on there. That would be the general areas that we're going to look at as far as the building location, and then everything that needs to happen around that building would build out from there. The other thing on this drawing is if you'll notice, there's 2 site entrances identified, one from County Trunk F and one from Cooley Trail. There was a traffic study done at the request of the city that identified those as the 2 entrance areas to the site. That's really we're restricted to those 2 areas. The one from F lines up with the existing Y entrance, which makes a lot of sense. And the one from Cooley Trail is kind of at the crest of the hill. If you drive that road, it's a little more up and down. F is pretty flat and straight. Cooley's straight, but there's some hills you go up and down a little bit. So there's some sight distance issues, and they recommended that the entrance be at the crest of that hill. So that's the other important thing here. And then what we take from here is we'll start looking at conceptual plans for those 3 scenarios. As Tom mentioned, we developed a site program for everything that's going to be located on the site. We worked with the committee on developing that site program. And this exhibit basically talks about an active zone and a passive zone on the site. I took one of the concepts and just looked at 2 areas. There's a green area and kind of a beige or gray or a brown area here. What I call the active area, that's the building, circulation, play areas, and that's about 18 acres is what we're equating that to. That would be with a 1-story solution on this site. And then there's the passive zone. Luckily, you have enough land to where you can create some other things on site. You can preserve all or most of the woods. You have some opportunities to do possibly some different types of vegetated areas, such as a prairie or native area. There's opportunities for an on-site trail because of the amount of space you have. Stormwater management is something we'll have to manage the drainage on site by regulation, so those areas would be in that passive zone. And then there's opportunities for outdoor education. I mentioned the wooded area. You could create an outdoor classroom. With the native landscaping, you could create outdoor educational opportunities to learn about things like that. And so that was really the focus of this. On any of these scenarios, there's going to be that active zone and that passive zone. And luckily, with the amount of land you have, we can create both on here. And the passive zone could certainly provide opportunities for future development too, if the school needs to do that. This drawing is a little bit hard to read. This was just a study, a quick sketch that we brought along to kind of help you understand how we start looking at how to develop things like the orientation of the building, a front entry, a rear entry, service entry, all those things we need in the school. In this case, this scenario looks at a front entry. Because of the visibility and the access, it looks at a front entry from F. So that's what this particular drawing shows. And then a rear entry from Cooley Trail, and kind of that service, the arrows coming from the north represent a service zone or service area on the north side of the building. And one of the things this is telling us, some of the sustainable concepts that Tom will talk about, we like to orient the building for maximum solar access to as many classrooms as we can, and we focus on the classrooms. So the south side of the building is really all classrooms, so we can maximize the solar access to that side of the building, so we don't have that other stuff going on in there. And then now we've developed 3 concepts based on those building zones that you saw before, and they all of these have the same elements on them. They have the building, a visitor and staff parking, a parent drop-off area, a bus drop-off area that's also the asphalt play area for the school. The nice thing that you have here, and the way the roadways worked out, the traffic study reinforces it, is you have a great opportunity here to do something that a lot of schools want to do but aren't able to do because of road or site constraints, is you have an opportunity here to separate that parent traffic from the bus traffic, and the parent drop-off kids from the bus kids. And so that's always a safety issue, and we have a great opportunity to separate that here by having access from one road. Provide, in this scenario, the buses would come in from Cooley Trail on the east, and then come into the site, be able to circulate on the large asphalt area on the east side of the building, and come back out and go out on Cooley Trail without going anywhere else on site, no other traffic conflicts or pedestrian conflicts. Likewise, this labeled on here is the primary entrance is from F across from the Y driveway. Great opportunity to provide a really nice circulation system, so it can be as convenient as possible for parent drop-off and visitors to come in and drop off or park, and for staff to get into the site and park on site. So great opportunities to do that here, and we can, as I said, all of these concepts have those same elements, and they also have the same number of play fields. We're showing 2 large play fields and a ball field right now on the program. The other opportunity that we have here is, I mentioned that passive zone, and there's 3 shades of green here. The one is, the darkest green is the wooded area. The medium shade is on here, could be potentially that different types of vegetation on site, whether it be, I've labeled it here as potentially native landscaping, to try to minimize the developed area so you have less to maintain. We can develop some of that native vegetation that doesn't need, it's a low maintenance, so a lot of the site could be a low maintenance. It provides good opportunities for paths and things like that. So we're trying to create that active zone in the middle. This scenario, it relates to building zone B. Again, this is the first one, and this one both represent a 1-story building solution. This one, the access to the site is the same opportunities, just a little bit different layout with the primary access from F with parents and visitors and so forth, and then the secondary access for buses only from Cooley. So very similar concept, just the building is in a different zone on the site. And then the last concept right now, this is the 3rd concept that we're evaluating at this point, is we wanted to look at the site in a little bit different way and also look at a 2-story solution. The steepest part of the site is about where you see the building located on this, which is the brown strangely configured box at the southeast corner of the site. So we wanted to look at things a little bit differently and look at what would happen if we went to a 2-story solution and we put it in an area that's got some more slope to it, so it relates, the building can relate to that slope. You would come in off of Cooley on this one, and we wanted to look at what it would mean to move the entrance to Cooley Trail, the primary access, at an option and what would happen. So in this case, primary or parents would come in off of Cooley, and there's a drop-off zone there just northeast of the building with a loop and some parking that would serve as that parent drop-off and pickup area. And in this case, the parents would loop up there, go back out to Cooley. The buses would actually come in on F and do the same thing as in the other scenario, where they could drop off at the rear of the building or the west side of the building on this scenario. And in this concept, you would actually enter the building the parent entry drop-off area would be at one level, the bus entry would be at a second level, so it'd be a two-story solution, and it would work with the hill, where the second, you'd come in at the upper level from the main entry, and then the lower level would be the secondary entrance for the bus kids. It presents some different challenges on the site. There's quite a bit of grade difference in there. We'd have to deal with that. And some of the fields and so forth would be substantially lower than the front of the building. Obviously within the building there'd be stairs and elevator and so forth. But we're still exploring that opportunity and how a two-story solution might fit on the site. So those are the three of the concepts that we've looked at so far. In creating these, we've obviously looked at a lot more, but just to keep you updated, we wanted to give you that, show you the variety of concepts that we're looking at this point. Thank you.
Well, as Tom had mentioned, we started out by getting a program. We were handed one, we met with teachers, we refined it, we met with a committee, refined it some more, and that helped us to determine what the various rooms are that will be in this building. And then the next challenge is to organize them in a way that makes sense functionally, aesthetically, environmentally, etc. So we've played around with a lot of schemes. This just represents a few. The three to your left are one-story plans, and then the one on your right, well, I guess one with one above it, are the two-story version. And they're never perfect at this stage. There were definite shortcomings with some of the first two that we played with. And when we brought them to committee, we settled on the one in the middle. That is a one-story plan. We had a lot of debate in our last session about one-story versus two-story, as we did in the committee also. Two-story does use up a slightly smaller footprint. I calculated that between these two schemes, it saved about 30%. However, you'll have the problem that from the point of view of whoever's on the lower floor or on the upper floor, most of the rest of the school is at the wrong level. And there's no way around it. Because that's just the nature of things. And with little children negotiating stairs, most teachers and administrators have a definite preference for one story. And if you have the space on the site to do it, that's generally the way we go. We're not insisting that that's the way we go. Cost-wise, we've analyzed that and found that in terms of construction costs, it's really a wash, because the two-story building is slightly bigger. You've got to put in space now for stairs, and again, just taking the areas of these two plans, the two-story plan was about 7% larger than the one-story plan. So, you know, there are pluses and minuses, and you can go back and forth. And if you're in a downtown location where you had no space, then of course we might end up with a 2, 3, 4-story, whatever the site dictated. Here we do have a choice. So we're leaning towards the one-story plan at this stage, and I'll show you how it evolved. The first set of drawings you saw looked very regimented. You can loosen them up. The first idea was just to get function, get relationships between various rooms, because you know that if you have a cafeteria, next to the cafeteria you're going to have a kitchen. Next to the kitchen you're going to have a delivery area. Next to the delivery area you're going to have dumpsters, and so on. Then you look at the classrooms and what the classrooms want to be next to. And just about every teacher I met wanted to be right smack dab in the center of the school. Obviously there's a little congestion there, so we have to spread them out a bit to try and get everybody roughly where they need to be. So the point of this is to show that even though the first set of drawings were very regimented, there is an opportunity to actually develop architecture as we go further. That would be jumping the gun a little bit. We need to know there are opportunities, but we still need to get the organization to a point where everybody's happy. So if we can go to the next slide. This then is a conceptual plan which is a little beyond the one we picked last week with the committee, but still needs some tweaking, and we actually got some very good input from the last group we met with, and will doubtless get some from you. So this is still at a very loose stage where it's easy to move things around. So no need to worry that you are disrupting anything if you're not happy with the way it's laid out. The basic idea here is to try and maximize on the orientation for cool daylighting. This means we want the majority of the windows to face north or south. And you can see the blue areas, which are the majority of the grade level classrooms, first through fifth grade. They are oriented in such a way that all the windows do face north or south. You can cock them a little bit, 10% off the strict axis is fine. We have two main entrances, one to the left, which would be the parent drop-off main entrance facing F, and then to the right we have a secondary entrance, which would be where the kids could come off the bus. Now we also do have the fortunate advantage that since the classrooms all have doors that go out directly to the back, if the administrators decide it's more convenient to have the kids enter directly into the wings where they actually have their homerooms, they could do so too. So there's flexibility. If things are not working one way, you can change them around. We're also thinking that the bus parking lot would have a gate so that after the buses have left in the morning, that would be a hardtop play area for the kids. So they would also go out to recess through that secondary entrance. Coming in now again through the front, we have a vestibule, and we have found a formula that's really worked for us over the last 10 years where we have two sets of doors, the ones that get you from the outside into the vestibule, and then another set that gets you into the main hallway. And at 8:45, after all the kids are in, we would lock that second, or you would lock that second set of doors. And then there would be a door from the vestibule that led directly into the secretary's office, so that all visitors that come to this school are forced to pass through the office, and you're not just hoping that secretary notices somebody rushing past. So that's a good security feature. What we'd also done in this scheme is made it possible that parents dropping off their kids for the school-age care program or picking them up could also go directly from the vestibule into the cafeteria, so that parents picking up kids are not wandering all over the school, and that would also be a security feature. That location of the cafeteria then brought in the kitchen and the service area and delivery area, which we've tried to place so they'd be screened from both of the other entrances so that you wouldn't be greeted by dumpsters when you first approach the school. Next, well, part of the cafeteria would be a raised area. You see a curved line, and there'd be a stage. We're thinking of this as a performance space for smaller groups, a place where a speaker who's addressing an entire grade could meet with the kids, as long as they schedule it outside the lunch hour. One thing I'd forgotten to mention in the previous group, we had talked about what happens when it's a really large performance, and that we would bring risers into the gym so that when you have all the grandparents and everybody showing up for a performance, that would happen in the gym. But for day-to-day gatherings, the cafeteria would be a good-sized space with a stage where this could happen. And so we've located the music rooms just beside the cafeteria, where they're also convenient to the gym. So it works either way, whichever is your performance space. Music is in a good location. The green spaces are spaces we think would be accessed by the public. Schools are often community centers as well, and parents come in after hours. Groups, we're thinking of a relationship with the Y. They've expressed a great interest in using some of these spaces. So the green areas are the ones which we're thinking are, if you like, public community spaces as well as educational. So we also have the library at the front of the building and a computer lab, which could also be used by the public. We would have doors leading to the hallways, to the corridors, so that all of those corridors which lead directly to the classrooms could be closed off. And after hours, people could come in, circulate around the gym, get to all the public spaces, and also get out the back door, but wouldn't be wandering through the whole school. As far as the other spaces are concerned, we've got the purple classrooms are kindergarten and early childhood. They're grouped together. There was a desire to have them near the office and near the entrance because many parents go directly to pick them up. And then we have a sort of dark salmon-colored classroom areas, which would be the specialized classrooms. Some of them would be special ed, some would be the tutoring for reading or math, art, music. Rooms like that would be gathered in those areas where they're central to all the classroom spaces, so they're easily accessible. One of the nice things about the way the early childhood kindergarten are grouped is that they would have direct access to a little sheltered play area outside, which could be fenced in so that you won't lose any of the kids. And then the playground for the older kids could be away, perhaps on the other side of the bus parking lot, so that they could get there across blacktop and not be tracking mud back into the school after recess. I think those are the basic ideas. Then we had, one other idea. That curved corridor between the offices and the gym, that's thought of as a large gathering space. We keep hearing how much the space at Hudson Prairie is appreciated because parents come in and wait for their kids. And that's where we are anticipating that would happen. It could be a taller space with clear-story lighting so that it's lit with natural light. The gym could also be similarly lit. And other than that, we've made a real effort that every classroom that a child spends more than an hour in would have natural light. There are a few specialized classrooms in the center of school where kids are just tutored for a short period of time and would leave. Those may or may not have natural light. We could bring some from above, we'll see. But classrooms with view windows are all on the perimeter. Next slide. This was very much a schematic plan, but there is one idea that we had developed quite far and are pretty excited about, and this is a typical classroom layout. We'd heard how much people like the pods at Hudson Prairie, but when we visited them, it seemed as if they were trying to do too much in one space. There's storage, there's a teaching space, and there's a circulation space. And when you ask a space to do too much, it often doesn't do any one of them as well as it could. So what we've done here is we have two classrooms side by side with two smaller spaces between them. The corridor is to the upper side so that you would come into the classrooms from the top. You can see the door there. And along that corridor wall we have casework with a sink. And then the doors that immediately beside the entry door would be storage, so that there's plenty of room for storing materials and things, and it's shared by the two classrooms. The two doors the teachers can get at these materials. And if a teacher from across the hall needs to get something, they're not really walking all the way through the classroom disrupting things. The other space to the outside is a small classroom, a breakout space, which could be used for tutoring, for testing, for small groups to work together. It would be shared by the two classrooms. The two teachers would have to work out who was using it when. But even if there's no teacher in that space, there's a good side light, and as we get further into this, we can decide whether the door wants to be full glass or partial glass, so that the teachers in the classrooms would have a good view of whatever is going on in that space. And by having it on the outside wall, it will have natural light. Right now we're just showing large windows just to give the idea that we have lots of natural light, but as the elevations evolve, the windows will change their shape so that they harmonize with what the overall building design is. So not to take the windows too literally, but just understand that we're trying to get as much daylight as possible into all the teaching spaces. Next slide. And just briefly, these are slides from some of the schools we've done. To the left is a library, on the right are some classrooms. And you can see lots of big windows, natural light. Lower left, you can actually see a space on the, lower right, on the left side of it, where there is a breakout space, the red frame door, There's a breakout space. In your school, we would actually make that the storage room. In this school, that was the breakout space, but one of the shortcomings we've realized is by having it on an inside wall, it didn't have natural light, so we think it would be an improvement to have storage in that location and push this to the outer wall. You can also see in this bottom right a tiled area, which is along where the casework is, so that there's an area that could be messy for craft-type activities, and the rest of the classroom is carpeted. And the rear wall has a tackable surface on it, which allows lots of display area and also is acoustically helpful. It's not just a hard surface. And I'll turn it over to Tom.
I'm going to kind of go through these slides pretty quickly. I'm just going to touch on a couple of ideas regarding sustainable design. Just a point about Hoffman and how we approach all of our projects. Several years ago, we made a commitment as a company to become very aware of and integrate sustainable design concepts or environmentally friendly design concepts, whatever term you want to use, green concepts, into our company culture. And to that point, you see the little logo at the bottom, TPM to the power of G. We originally was total project management. Now it's total project management vision taken to the power of green. We've actually rebranded our company about a year and a half ago as a symbolic gesture towards the commitment that we've made to sustainable design. All of our projects are designed to LEED silver minimum standards. This building will be, whether it's certified or not, it will be an environmentally friendly designed building. Right now, Hoffman, as a company, we actually have the highest rated LEED building in the world, which is an office building that we did in St. Louis, Missouri, and we just brought online in September a new high school in Northland Pines, Eagle River, which will become the first LEED certified high school in the state of Wisconsin, which was submitted at LEED Gold. This is just kind of a slide talking about some big ideas that we incorporate, conserving energy, enhancing indoor air quality, conserving water, minimize construction waste. A couple of the big ideas that are going to drive this project, as we mentioned and you've heard a couple of times, are daylighting. Also, water management, how we conserve water in the building through the design process. Indoor air quality will be a big deal to us, and acoustics will be a big deal to us in this building. Next. We talked about daylighting. This is an example of a daylit classroom. You notice that there are 2 fluorescent fixtures in this classroom, as opposed to sort of that sea of 2x4 troffers that you would normally see maybe in a traditional classroom setting. This building is designed for nighttime use, but it's also designed to minimize the number of light fixtures, which eliminates the need to buy them and conserves energy because you don't have as many fixtures. It also addresses the issue of heat, which is the big idea in any institutional building or office building is heat. You're almost cooling the building much more than you're ever actually heating the building because people, computers, light fixtures are all contributing to the heat load of a building. And so anything we can do to minimize that heat load in a building has direct bottom line benefits to you in terms of operational costs. So there's a concept called cool daylighting, which means that if we can minimize the number of light fixtures, it has a domino effect. In this case, this is the Northland Pines High School, in which we're able to eliminate a number of the light fixtures in there through a series of strategies. We were able to lower this, minimize the size of the chillers, minimize the size of the HVAC system. This building will save over 40% of energy compared to a code minimum baseline building. And this building was about 250,000 square feet. They came from a high school which was about 115,000 square feet. This building will use the same or maybe just a little bit less energy every year than their existing building. Those same ideas will be translated into this new elementary school, along with ideas of conserving or using recycled materials and materials that can be recycled when this new elementary school serves its useful life. Next. Just some more daylighting. I want to just skip through that, please. Point that I want to make is that energy conservation, sustainable design, green design is going to be a huge part of the dialogue as we move forward with the design of this school. So why don't you go to the next slide? And with that, I think we'll open it up for questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, anything you might have for us that we can answer.
Thank-
Actually, several. Most of them answered. With regard to the traffic study, that indicated the preferred entrance to the school buses?
The answer is no, it didn't. It,
Mark, you have to take your microphone so they can.
Mark, why don't you come here?
I wanted to bring up one comment that was made at the Planning Commission meeting. The traffic engineer that did the study was asked that same question: is there a preferred entrance? He said that with his experience, his opinion was that F would be the preferred entrance.
Okay. Thank you.
It wasn't in the report, but he made that as a verbal comment at the Planning Commission.
Okay, that's the reason why I didn't know it.
Tom, I'm wondering if you could go back to that concept layout where you were showing kind of the block diagram of the room layouts. And I'll just make a couple comments to the board. That's the one. The rooms that you're looking at on the west side or your left-hand side, and Catherine talked about them being in green. And one of the things that we've tried to do, and I think is absolutely the correct thing to do, is have this school be a community-type facility in non-school hours, i.e. evening and weekends, so that they're clustered together. And if you'll note that when Catherine talked about blocking the hallways off, there's really 4 hallways going down into the classroom corridors. So that's one. There's another classroom corridor, the third and the fourth at the top. So if you wanted to have the YMCA use the gymnasium, have adult education in the computer lab, open up for community education in the media center, all of those are clustered on that west side. And one of the reasons that we did that was to cluster to be a good neighbor, accessible to the YMCA, but also clustered to be really an asset to the community to use for non-school or non-educational type functions. The other that I would mention is if the angles that we talked about, based on the orientation of the building, we thought that because of access to daylight and to the sun and the orientation of the hallways, came back from Hoffman to begin to angle. Take a look at that at the top and the bottom classroom corridors. Again, just to begin to, and this, everything is subject to change on this, but just to begin to introduce, a little bit going away from the long corridors, giving some additional security in those classroom areas, but also giving some interesting architectural features with the angles rather than having everything being rigid and straight lines. So, and then the last comment that I would make would be on the location of the cafeteria. The site that we visited last week, the elementary school, the music room was a little bit separate from the cafeteria, and we thought if there were going to be concerts, community events, it made sense to begin to locate that music room relatively close to the cafeteria, which at this point is proposed to have a stage. This committee has seen a cafeteria with a stage, well done, and we thought that was an applicable concept for both school and non-school type functions.
Dick, a question on the, I noticed there's some salmon-colored space that's not designated. Is that storage, or what is that used for? If you look below the yard, there's a couple, 2, 3, 4 empty.
That's probably supply storage. We haven't labeled everything. There are going to be mechanical rooms, supply storage. So basically, that's all service areas. Students and public won't be there. It'll be basically maintenance.
You also mentioned that on the 2-story design, it would save 30%. What were you referring to there? Because then later on you said that the cost is a wash between the...
Okay, it doesn't save 30% of the overall space. It's the footprint.
Okay, I see.
It actually is bigger, about 7% bigger, because now you've got to introduce stairs and an elevator. So the reason for going to 2-story is you're actually trying to reduce the footprint. You reduce the foundations, although the foundations have to be beefed up. You reduce the amount of roof. But when you start to balance everything, because we went through this exercise with the school in Kimberley, which we just finished, we felt the costs were really a wash.
And I think, as you had already said before, Catherine, too, there's really no upside for Hudson to looking at a 2-story building, given the size of our site. Is that right?
Well, let me, the whole notion of a 2-story school, there probably isn't a right or wrong, and that's how I would say it. I could make a positive case probably for either way. What tends to drive these solutions is educational delivery and sort of staff input and administration input on how the building should function as an educational facility. Sometimes you don't have a choice. You're on a tight site, and you have to have a 2-story solution. And by the way, just a clarification, what 2-story means in something like this is taking, for example, half of those blue areas and setting them on top of the other blue areas. That's about, within reason, that's about what you can stack in an elementary school. You could put a few things over the library, maybe a few things over the offices if it works out functionally. There's not a lot of spaces actually that you can stack in an elementary school because of the nature of the height of individual. The gym wants to be big. It's pretty hard to set something on top of the gym without getting into sort of a multi-level facility, something like this, which you kind of want to avoid. Or you're putting spaces on top of other tall spaces that want to be a little bit taller, like the cafeteria, for example, or the library, or that entrance area, which want to have a little more volume so you don't seem compressed when you're walking into a building. So you certainly could do it. You could do it here. You could take this plan right here, and you could stack all of those classrooms on top of one another and maybe even find a couple more spaces that you could stack. You could make it work. You would reduce your footprint. You would actually probably reduce the overall sort of building volume a little bit. You're increasing the amount of square footage. You might be washing on cost. So the question you have to answer at the end of the day is, which way serves you best educationally? And for our part, we don't have a strong preference one way or the other. We can, again, I could probably make a positive case either way. Right now, what we're hearing, I would say the committee is sort of leaning pretty strongly to a 1-story solution. I don't know that the final decision has been made. We're going to be making that decision very quickly, though. Did that answer your question?
It did.
Okay.
Thanks.
Other board members?
Was there any discussion about the expandability of this concept? I mean, any discussion about that?
Oh, you mean being able to expand it in the future? Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And there's 2 ways that we address that. First of all, we look at the sort of total number of students that the building is being sort of planned for today, and then we say, okay, what is the reasonable amount to plan for in the future? And when we look at that, we look at spaces like the gymnasium, the library, the cafeteria, the kitchen, what we call core spaces in a building that are, once they're built, they're very hard to expand. And those are designed to accommodate that future projection. And then the classroom wings are designed to be able to add on classrooms in that direction. So the site design, when it's finally designed, is designed so we make sure that the parking lots are far enough away so that any expansion that needs to happen happens in two ways. One, there's internal expansion, so you can add students to this building. For example, if you wanted to set your classroom ratio at 20 right now, you could probably move up to 25, 26, 27, 28 kids within each classroom. You'd begin to feel some pressure, but you could do it without putting any pressure on any of the other spaces. You would reach a point where you would say, okay, now it is time to add classrooms. You could easily add classrooms onto this building without changing anything else. The whole point of this is to be able to provide both internal expansion and external expansion in the future, but minimize what you need to do to the building, to those core spaces. Does that answer your question?
Dan, just two other quick comments on the layout. One thing that we consistently heard when we talked to parents and staff at Hudson Prairie is if you come into that open area right by the main office, right in front of the media center, fairly large, oversized space, everybody we talked to said that is something that you've got to take into the new school, and we're reflecting that in the front area of the gymnasium. And compare that to EP Rock, where there's really nothing. You walk in that front door and you're in the school, whereas Hudson Prairie, you walk in. And one thing that we're consistently hearing about Hudson, we're not sure why, is that at our grade schools, the parents take their kids into the school and they pick their kids up. They physically go into the school, and everybody that we talk to says, we're really unique. We're not sure why that is. Some of the school districts we've talked to they just kind of shake their heads and, well, why is that? We don't know why. But in Hudson, the parents take their kids into the school. They pick their kids up in the school, and that's one of the reasons why we're carrying this concept over. It might have to do with commuting patterns. It might have to do with work patterns. We don't know. But the fact is, unanimous carry that concept of that lobby at Hudson Prairie into this school. The other thing that if you look at Hudson Prairie, because of the shared facility that they have with the middle school, a lot of our students walk quite a distance to get to the gymnasium, and they walk by all the classrooms. So one thing we try to do with this concept, and it is only a concept at this point, is we've tried to eliminate a lot of that grade school traffic. If you're going to go down to the core facilities like the cafeteria, like the music studio, the gymnasium, we're trying to avoid as best we can a lot of foot traffic on the part of the elementary students going by other classrooms and disrupting during the day. So again, all this is lines on the paper right now. Hoffman has been extremely easy to work with. We're on schedule. We're working well. I think a couple things that we need back from you tonight is, are there any major issues, major things that you see that we're not accomplishing, or are we way out in left field on some of the concepts and ideas that we're talking about? And the second thing, I think Tom was right on when he talked about one-story versus two-story, because at the end of the day, what this is an educational facility to deliver an educational program, and we can talk about sustainability, site access, safety, et cetera, but what this is an educational facility, and what we're hearing from the staff is one-story versus two-story. And we don't have to make that decision tonight, but it is imminent. We're going to have to make that relatively soon. And Pat Hodges, Pat's still here, feels strongly. She is the principal in this school right now. It is not only a two-story facility, it's a, what is it, Pat, 5? 9 levels? Okay. So if you talk one-level facility to her, she is going to support a one-level facility as opposed to a two-story. So.
Tom, I have a question regarding, since this is going to be a facility that's going to be available for public use at different times of the day, and keeping with the green space theme, Are we able to shut down, heating systems and just be able to operate like the gymnasium area and that part of it? Can you talk to that a little bit?
Sure. While the actual system that we're going to use in terms of an HVAC or a mechanical system hasn't been selected yet, we're actually evaluating whether it should be a ground source heat pump system with displacement ventilation that comes in low and distributes high versus a heat recovery variable air volume system with 100% outside air. Sounds a little technical, but that's kind of what we're sort of looking at both ways. Either way, the question that you're asking has actually more to do with the control systems. How do we control this building both to conserve energy but also to accommodate different use patterns? And we understand that the building will be a year-round building. You can't design and build a school at this day and age without it being a year-round building. So through the technology that's available today in control systems, we're able to basically control this building in just about any way that you want, to be able to set it up for summer use, for multiple day uses. The answer actually is yes, we can probably accommodate pretty much anything you want. About the only thing that's tough, I had a teacher one time that within her classroom, she wanted her desk area to be about 82 degrees all day long, and the rest of the classroom to be about 72 or so, and that becomes tough to do. But that's a tough one.
So she's the one that uses the pod.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a comment. So two questions. How many students are we planning for in this space?
It's about 580 right now.
And what are you sizing the core areas for in terms of number of students?
The core areas, I believe, are going to be sized for about 650 or so. I'm not going to swear to that number, but I think we're looking at somewhere around there. Do you recall, Catherine?
No, those are good answers. That's in Hawaii.
So, and the second question is, given that we have a budget for this project, is at what point do we start making kind of decisions, trade-offs? We all everyone wants the world here, but what's the decision point when we start saying we have a fixed budget that we're not going to go over by no stretch of our imagination?
For us, that point in time started the minute you hired us. There is a fixed budget. We know that. We understand it. And we simply will not design a building to go over that budget. And the honest answer is we've been doing this even up to this point in time. For example, we talked about that space program and sort of the number of spaces and the kinds of spaces and the size of spaces. We've actually been going through, a lot of discussion within our committee. At one point in time, the total amount of square footage was higher than the referendum amount, and then it came back, then it jumped a little higher, and it's going back and forth, but always with an eye on the budget, because right now at this level of planning, square footage is the only thing that we've got. And so we're managing to that budget, and we're actually on budget right now.
So when you say it's a fixed, fixed cost, what does that mean to us though as a board? What's the risk factor to us in terms of, meeting the budget, or coming in, hopefully under budget? What's the control points for us as a board on that process?
Well, square footage is one, for example, during this early planning stage. That's certainly number one right now. As we progress further along, and you saw those events, schematic design, design development, construction documents, each one of those is an event where we will present to you, here's the schematic design and here's the budget relative to that, relative to the detail. Here's design development, here's the budget relative to that detail. At each point in time, we're going to be building in cost control measures in order to ensure that the project does come in at or under budget. For example, simple things like contingency amounts that are built in every budget development process, but also alternate bidding. And we'll look at spaces that we absolutely can alternate bid, and if for some reason through there's only so much we can control. There's always going to be factors that we can't control, so we need to plan for that with bidding strategies that allow to make sure that the base building, everything you absolutely need, can get built. And if for some reason there's a cost anomaly, we experienced just in the recent past, that sudden rise in gas costs that nobody could control, and it impacted everything in the building industry. We have to build in cost control measures and bidding strategies that allow us to maintain that budget.
And what's your track record so far on coming in, on or under budget?
I almost hate to answer this question because you probably aren't going to believe it, but I can't remember a project that's been over budget in any recent past.
Yep.
Can you?
If I can answer that question, just adding a little further on, what we do with this is the alternate bidding. The last school, they wanted tack wall everywhere. Tack wall is a very easy alternate bid. You can have a school with concrete walls painted, and tack wall will be nice to have, but if the budget won't stretch to it, that can go. You can always buy tackable surfaces later. So we try to identify as many of those as possible so that you get the bricks and mortar, because those are harder to add. And so usually when the bids come in, we are under budget. Now we've got this long list of the nice to haves, but we didn't need to have, so that hopefully when it goes well, the way it usually does, you can pick and choose. Now there may be some, because you've just got such a long list, that you decide, no, we won't bother with those. So I think to some extent you can say, are you under budget? Yes. Did you get everything you needed? Yes. Did you get every last thing you wanted? Well, it just depends how many wants you had. Sometimes the answer to that also is yes, if we have a good bidding climate. So.
Brian, the other thing I would like to say is Tim had called and talked to a number of districts that Hoffman has worked with, and they were reinforcing what you just heard about coming in on budget and being very aware and managing that process well. But that is with their total management process that we have not at this point decided to use. We have not made that decision yet.
Brian, a couple of comment also on that is that, one of the site visits we went on, we went in an elementary school that had a gymnasium in excess of 10,000 square feet. For that particular school district, it was important to them. Athletics is important, gymnasiums are important. We're not sized anywhere near that. We're at a 7,000 square foot gymnasium. I think for the size of the school, that's appropriate. So it is square footage, what Tom talked about, and that's, we can still move those numbers around. And then the second thing is how we go to bid. And, typical what they call FF&E, or furniture, fixtures, and equipment, we can bid that ourselves, break that out from any of the bidding packages, et cetera. So, as we continue to refine this, it will relate to how we bid, and right now it's square footage is what we're working with. But, we're going to bring this building in, and we're going to be on budget or under budget. That's what this community voted on and expects, and that's the process we're on.
I have a question for Mark. When we originally acquired this property, I remember it was unique in relationship to it being close to the Camp YMCA, and we sort of envisioned, that relationship developing once a school was placed on that site. But the concern that I had then and still have would be the, accessing the two, areas. Have you given that any thought, or how we could easily get from one campus to the other?
Are you talking about physically crossing Highway F?
Right.
We've had discussions about that. I know there's only two ways to do it. You go over or you go under. At the last committee meeting, well, safely, I should say. There's probably not going to, the other safe situation is to cross at grade level, but at a controlled intersection. Well, the numbers just aren't going to justify a stoplight anywhere out there for many, many years. And as long as that's in control of the county, I've never seen a county put in a stoplight on a county trunk highway unless the traffic numbers justified it. So I don't think that's going to happen. That's also an expensive solution. I mean, there's some opportunities to look at over or under the road. At the last committee meeting, the decision was made that I would call the county and at least explore what their guidelines would be or their restrictions or standards for doing either of those things, and talk to them about other situations that they've dealt with in this particular county. And then there's other resources that we could look into also. The Y expressed a real interest in trying to figure out a way to get people across that road safely. So I know they'd like to do it. You know, there's liking to do it, and the cost, as Catherine was just talking about, that's something that's one of those wants that I think the Y wants, you want. We'll explore it for you and help you try to make a decision, a responsible decision on that. Sorry I can't give you a better answer than that,
Okay,
but I know everybody's interested in it, and that's one of the things we're going to be looking at as far as the site design is how the two sites can physically connect, and even with that county highway going down between them.
You know, as long as those lines, Mark, and I haven't seen anything with regard to the traffic study, but is there substantial traffic during school hours? I mean, I'm sure there is during commuting times, but I'm just wondering what is midday traffic like on Ave?
The numbers, to quote the traffic engineer, I can't quote him exactly, but I mean the numbers out there for the type of highway that is are really pretty insignificant. There's a peak hour in the morning. There's a peak hour, or he called it 2 hours, in the morning and in the afternoon. But it's the commuter traffic. And even at those peak hours, the traffic levels are still within acceptable levels and aren't projected to exceed any standards in the near future. So, I mean, he was real encouraged with the numbers that he got from the traffic study and didn't see any traffic issues at all, and didn't recommend. One of the things we were concerned about is them recommending realignment of Cooley Trail as it intersected F. That was a big concern because could be a tremendous cost, and he said there's absolutely no justification for that right now, or he would thought in the near future. And the school's not going to create any real hardship on those roads to justify any improvements like that. We will have to do some things in the right-of-way turn lanes and things like that at the entrances, but that's something you have to do just for safety.
Thanks, Mark.
Dan, I'd like to go back to your comment about potential with partnering with the YMCA. And right now, there are no dollars in the referendum budget allocated for any kind of over or underpass. So we would have to look at other sources if that was going to happen.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments, board members? Thank you, Tom, and your team. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Does it seem like we're heading down the right path so far?
I think you're going in the right direction.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll move on with item 6, progress update meeting. Mary?
Well, knowing Dick talked about this as a community school, we certainly want to share information about the development of this project with our community. So we're in the process of scheduling a couple community information sessions with the Hoffman architects, and the first one is scheduled for Tuesday, March 27th at 7 p.m. I believe it's going to be here. We have a few details to work out, so the final location still needs to be determined. But we will be sharing an update on where we are with the design at that time. So that's Tuesday, March 27th at 7 p.m. We're also looking forward to the final design and bringing that out publicly. It looks like it'll be towards the end of May. We have a tentative date, but we're going to have to see how that evolves. So that'll be towards the end of May. And then we will be having updates at board meetings, but we have a special board meeting tentatively scheduled for April 24th, so you'll want to put that on your calendars. There may be one August 7th, but Again, that's so far out right now, it's very tentative, and it's a week before our regular board meeting, I believe, so we may not do that one. We may have to call a different one. It depends where we are with the progress in the school. The Facilities and Grounds Committee will be having updates, more frequent updates, in regard to where we are with the design.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Unless there's any comments, further discussion, we'll move back into the other portion of the agenda. I'll have to have a motion to go back into our Robert Rules of Order segment of the meeting.
So move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, motion is approved. Now is the opportunity to take citizens' requests to speak on the items that on 11A, because 11B has been stricken from the agenda that we approved earlier. So it would be just action 11A. So do we have any? Okay. We have two items. Bob McClinsky, do you want to come forward and state your name for us, please? Your address?
Yeah, I'm Bob McClinsky at 1301 Freer Street. I do have some comments to make about the secondary space for learning action item. Before that, I do want to make a related comment regarding long-term solutions to secondary space problems. I've noticed again that the Facilities and Grounds Committee continues to avoid long-term planning for crowding problems at the high school. Their last agenda included planning for the new elementary school and some secondary short-term planning. However, there was nothing on their agenda for long-term planning for the high school. As I've mentioned before, I feel that this failure to do long-term secondary planning constitutes gross mismanagement of the district. So therefore, Mr. Board President and Superintendent, on behalf of the citizens of this district, I call upon you to instruct the Facilities and Grounds Committee today to immediately begin discussing and researching long-term solutions to the high school crowding problem, including the building of a new high school. Now that being said, turning to the short-term planning for the high school, tonight it looks like you might decide to spend $1.5 million on moving the administration offices out of the high school and freeing up those 7 classrooms. I know that Mr. Lucas desperately wants those classrooms, so I would not consider speaking out against this plan, other than to say that a simple cost-benefit analysis makes me wonder if spending $200,000 per classroom really makes much sense. I do think there are other more cost-effective ways to free up space in that high school. There's one idea in particular that I think you should consider at this time. In December, you did ask the public for input on secondary short-term space solutions. That exercise turned out to be somewhat of a farce in that you didn't really take any advice from the public. The short-term initiatives you're focusing on were all in the works prior to asking for the public's advice, including relocating the district offices, the online learning, the modified open campus, and the 0 and 8th hours. One idea that you received from me was a suggestion to move to block scheduling at the high school. At your January 24th meeting, this suggestion was presented, and it was dismissed in under 1 minute. Considering all the hours that you spent hashing over the district office relocation since you began talking about it back in October, I would think you could have spent more than 1 minute discussing block scheduling. I've got a few minutes right now, so I'd like to fill you in. Block scheduling works something like this. Instead of having 7 50-minute classes per day, you have 4 90-minute classes. Each class meets every other day. A class which usually lasts 1 school year is completed in 1 semester. Block scheduling is not new and experimental. It's been around for about 20 years, and approximately 30% of all high schools successfully use some form of block scheduling, and that percentage is increasing. You might wonder how block scheduling could help with crowding. Well, first of all, you eliminate the need for study halls, since students stay in their classes during their entire day. You can think of all the classrooms that we're using right now for study halls that would instantly become available for classes. Also, with less class times comes less passing in the hallways, which you know is a major problem in our high school. And with half as many classes per day, the students' 40-pound backpacks become 20-pound backpacks, and all those back problems that they have go away. You get all of these benefits to your facility without spending a single dime on bricks and mortar. In fact, net benefit to your high school from block scheduling would far exceed the benefit you're going to get from your 7 new classrooms and paying $1.5 million. But there's much more to block scheduling than its effect on crowding. It's been around long enough now that studies have been conducted on the results of block scheduling. Here's just a sampling of some of the outcomes. Improved school climate with more relaxed atmosphere, greater student-teacher rapport, fewer disciplinary problems, improved class attendance, more individual attention from teachers, varied instructional activities, increased school safety, additional planning time for teachers, ability to offer a wider variety of elective courses, increased numbers of students completing their AP courses. With all of those good things, I have to wonder why this school district would not take a close look at block scheduling. I understand that you gave my suggestion the heave-ho last month because the district had looked at block scheduling about 6 years ago, and based on the apprehension of some of the teachers, the idea was dismissed back then. The experts will tell you that clinging to the status quo is the same reason block scheduling is not implemented in other high schools. It is natural for teachers and administrators and school boards to fear change, even when it's a change for the better. In fact, a survey was done of 24 high schools that switched to block scheduling regarding their attitudes both before and after the change. In that survey, only 33% of the teachers and administrators initially supported the change to block scheduling. But after the change, 80% said it had been a good idea. Prior to the change, only 38% thought that block scheduling would improve student achievement. But after the change, 81% concluded it did in fact have a positive impact. In January, Mr. Bell stated that the goal of this district is to make our school, quote, a national school of excellence. Do you expect that that is going to happen if you stick to the status quo? If that's what you believe, then your work is done. You might as well pack up and go home. But I really don't think you believe that. In the newspaper article recently on the HSD 2025 project, there was an example of a teacher's commitment statement, and it read like this. Teachers will reflect as practitioners and learners, seeking professional growth opportunities, collaborating and learning with their colleagues, being receptive to new ideas, taking risks to implement best practices.
Are you
about 1 second?
Okay.
Replacing less effective practices and celebrating efforts to improve student learning. So there you go. We do expect our teachers to embrace change after all. So think about it. This is not 6 years ago. We are not the same school district we were 6 years ago. We have new problems. We need to be open to new ideas to solve those problems. Now is the right time for our high school to move to block scheduling and take advantage of all the benefits it has to offer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. We'll move on to the next request. Brian Wirt, if you could step forward and give us your name and address, please.
Brian Wirt, 739 Regal Ridge Circle, town of Hudson. Tim, did you get my email, by the way? I did. Okay, thank you. I've read in the paper and on your website advantages and disadvantages for each of the proposed suggestions for the district office space. My concern is the option for the portables. The anticipated length of time they will be used is 5 years. In the paper, the company said that they would buy them back for $176,000. They understand their value goes down drastically. If they will be used longer than 5 years, I'm afraid your staff will become disgruntled. Also, I hope for the sake of the community trust that the portables will not be used as a pawn in procuring a new high school. As a building official, I have inspected portables in Baldwin and Somerset. The people that work in them told me that the portables were cold in the winter, hot in the summer, and they jiggle, the building, not the employees. If they are placed at EP Rock, it would not be fair to the neighborhood. They're not attractive, and they're afraid that the property values would go down too. So, thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Marion, you had also put in a request to speak, but 11B was stricken from the agenda at the beginning of the meeting. So, I'd just like to comment briefly, and maybe other board members may wish to comment on some of the remarks. As it relates to block scheduling, I know that came before this board, as Bob indicated, about 6 years ago, and if I recall, and maybe Nancy can help me here, that also was, I think, went through the curriculum council, and we received some community input, and from what I recall, there just wasn't a lot of support for it at that time. I'm not suggesting that, support doesn't, that's not the case today, but that's what I recall the last time that we reviewed it. Nancy, do you have anything else?
Yes, there was considerable study of that concept, and it did go through the curriculum council at that time and also to the board, and we do have some block scheduling that's implemented at the high school, and I think Sandy could maybe identify that, could you? Or am I? It's not done as extensively as Mr. McClinsky is suggesting, but there have been some blocks.
I couldn't even name right off the top of my head, but there are a few classes that are 2 periods in length, and then obviously we do have some students who have the longer classes that when they actually leave to in the afternoon when they leave the site for going to other WITC, UWRF, or their work experience.
Mary?
Block scheduling certainly does have some very positive advantages that Bob pointed out. And when I look at HSD 2025, we certainly will be looking to the future, as he also spoke about. And we don't know what that will look like, but we will be looking at changes in our school district, and block scheduling could be one of those changes that are a result. But we do need to wait through that process. And I guess I would also say that the HSD 2025 is a piece of looking to the future for our secondary solution, long-term solution, because we have to know what's going to happen inside that building as well. And looking to the future is a very important thing for us to do as we build a building or ask the public to support the construction of a secondary school.
Dick or Brian, do you wish to address the long-term planning issue that Bob raised?
In terms of the block scheduling, I was going to ask one question
I'm transitioning over to
your transition.
The long-term secondary space issue.
Well, I'll just make my comments really quick. I think so much is dependent on what comes out of the strategic planning process. And I think I've made the comment to Bob in the past that I think the way we deliver our curriculum is going to change dramatically in this district, and our facilities are going to have to reflect that, particularly at the secondary level. But the only thing I feel comfortable saying is that, and I've said it to the other board members, I don't know what our future secondary solution is going to look like in terms of a physical structure. But I know one thing that's not going to look like, and it's not going to look anywhere near what our current secondary facility, i.e. our high school, looks like. It's just not going to look like that. Not because of any editorial comment on the current high school, but just simply the way that we're going to deliver curriculum in a technological age. It's going to be a very, very different facility, but I don't think we're prepared to answer that question, and I know Mr. Myslinski doesn't maybe like that answer or response, but we're just not at the point in this district to begin to talk about bricks and mortar for a secondary solution. And I can apologize all day long for that, and I do apologize to citizens like Bob, but we're just not at that point.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, and that is to adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85 parent 1 parent E, negotiation, competitive price, and conditions for lease and purchase of property. I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, we'll have a roll call vote starting with Mark.
Kaisershot, aye.
Holland, aye.
Minnick, aye.
Habish, Arlene, aye.
Gull, aye.
Chernahoy, aye. And then we'll after we're done with closed session business, and we'll reconvene to open session. And then we do have an action item under 11A. Thank you.